Welcome back to Better Than Before. I'm Tony Richards, and in this segment, I'm going to give you 15 time killers, 15 things that suck your time away because we don't want to deal with it, or we're not prepared for it, or we're not very good at it, or several different reasons why these 15 things suck the very time right out of our schedules and right out of our professional lives and personal lives. Over the years, I've modified this list to include new techniques and technology. For years, I taught an original list of 13 to all my managers, and now I teach this modified list to my clients and my workshop participants because none of us can afford to waste any time since we always seem to have less of it for each minute we live. Unfortunately, the clock is winding down, not up, and we need to make sure we invest our time wisely. And as I've told you many times, I do not believe in managing time, so I don't teach any time management classes. I only teach you management classes because the only thing that is equal in this world among human beings is that we all have the same amount of time, and it's how we invest ourselves into it that's really, really important. In many cases, with the time killers I'm going to give you now, we end up spending more and more each time we use one or more of them. And you might even be able to add to or improve upon my list that I'm about to give you here. So let's start with number 1, interruption by others. You're working hard on a project, or you're really in the zone and you're really feeling it, and then all of a sudden somebody just comes into your office. Somebody just walks in uninvited, and they got what's notoriously known as the got a minute meeting. And it's like, got a minute? Got a minute? And so, and this one ties in very closely with number 2 also, by the way, which is the inability to say no. So with interruption by others, you have to just be very, very Zen-like over your behavior and your time. And there's nothing wrong with giving some time to somebody if you have it to spare. If you don't have it to spare, though, you do have to tell them, I can't, and then get back. However, I will tell you that, and maybe you've never experienced this, but being a former athlete and then also somebody who does work out from time to time, when somebody comes up, when you're in the middle of working out and they stop you from working out, how difficult is it to start working out again? It's very difficult. Or you're getting ready to hit a golf ball and someone says something to you right before you do it, and you have to do your whole process again to get set to hit the ball. So sometimes when you're in the middle of a project or you're in the middle of work you're doing, if somebody interrupts you, you have to reset the mechanism all over again and get back to the place you were. So I highly recommend keeping your door shut. I highly recommend locking your door, putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, whatever you have to do. Number 2, as I already mentioned, is inability to say no. I mean, many times we just say yes to too many things, and we end up overcommitted, and we end up with competing commitments. We end up saying yes to things that are competing with each other for our time, focus, and attention. And it's our own fault because we should have said no and we said yes. And so I like to tell people that every time you say yes, everything else gets a no. If I only have $5 in my pocket, I can only spend $5, right? Well, if I give 5 minutes to something, I can't give it 5 minutes to something else. That 5 minutes is spoken for, or that 10 minutes is spoken for, or that hour is spoken for. And when you commit too much, then you overcommit and you don't actually have the amount of time left in your sack it's going to take to do all the things you said yes to. So we all need to get better at saying no to people. And I know there's a fear of conflict there for some folks, and there's also a fear of damaging a relationship or whatever. But if you don't deliver on what you said yes to, you're going to have conflict and you're going to damage the relationship because you're going to let somebody down, or you're not going to do as good a job as you could have done if you would have said no. And a lot of times, the way you can do that is you can say no and then give an alternative. Do you have a minute to meet with me? No, but I can at 2. Can you work on this project? No, but I could Friday. If you have an alternative kind of loaded up for your next available space, that is better than just saying yes and getting overloaded. Number 3, also closely associated with that one, is unrealistic deadlines. And a lot of times we say yes to things that we know are not realistic, but somehow we justify it in our heads and we think, well, I'll figure out some way to get it done. But you're not going to do your best job or have your best performance or make the best decision or whatever it is if you don't have the proper amount of budgeted time to do it. And I believe in challenging ourselves to always do things faster, quicker, and better, but you have to know where you are in your skill set and what else you have to do in order to commit to an unrealistic deadline, or you have to propose something different to make it more realistic. Number 4 is very close cousins with number 1. Number 1 was interruption by others. Number 4 is lack of privacy. If you don't have the privacy to do the work you need to do, your whole thought process gets interrupted, and you get interrupted too many times, and you need to be able to think. And my grandmother used to say all the time that I'm so loud you couldn't hear herself think, and so and some people are more susceptible to outside things than other people are. Some people are very good at being able to close out the outside stimulus, and other people just can't. And so you got to do yourself a favor and get yourself a cone of silence so you can do what you need to do. Number 5 is also a close cousin to number 1, and it's interruption based, but it's interruption by phone or smartphone. The smartphone is there to serve you. You are not there to serve the smartphone. So whatever tech devices or whatever, you need to make sure you're managing them and they're not managing you. Number 6 is perfectionism. It's making things just a little bit better or more perfect when actually no one's going to be able to notice or tell the difference. It's not going to build any additional value into the project. It's just you striving over it and sweating over it and worrying about it and trying to make it perfect. Unfortunately, it's a self-stigmatizing thing because nothing in this world is perfect. And most of the time, if it doesn't add 20% to the project or 20% value to the end result, it isn't worth it. I don't believe in, that's good enough when it's not, but I also don't believe in overdoing it when it is good enough. And so you got to watch yourself because perfectionism can really get in your head. Number 7, searching for misfiled, mishandled, and misappropriated materials. When you know you had something, but now you just can't remember where you put it, you just can't remember what you did with it, and you search for it, and you search for it, and search for it, that is a big time waster. It's better to put it where it goes the first time than it is to just stuff it somewhere, throw it somewhere, shove it into this file or shove it into that drawer. It's worth the extra amount of motion it takes you and energy it takes you to put it where it goes so you can easily find it when you need it, rather than wasting all the time you waste trying to locate it or trying to find it. Number 8 is the first cousin to number 6, perfectionism, and that's procrastination. And a lot of times procrastination is linked in some way to perfectionism because it's not going to be perfect, so I'm just going to put it off. Or I don't have all the information I need to get started when actually you do. I'm just going to put it off. Putting it off. Well, I'm waiting to be inspired. I'm waiting for this person or that person. There's always something that you can do. It may not be exactly perfect as far as your starting place, but we can pretty much always start regardless. We can do something on the project even when we're waiting for things from other people. So those two, perfectionism and procrastination, are like beating yourself up both of your jaws, right? Each one on each side. Number 9 is an emotional one, and that's fatigue and stress. When you're tired, when you're worried and stressed out, this contributes to a lack of productivity and a waste of time because you feel stuck and you feel like you can't move forward and you feel like there are all these barriers in your way because your mindset is one of fatigue and stress. That is bad for the productivity of the product, and it's also bad from a health perspective for you because, especially as you get older, worry and fatigue and stress will take years off your life. So 9 and 10 are fatigue, stress, and worry. So you have to find a way not to fret. You have to. What is that? Worry is interest borrowed on tomorrow's trouble. It just isn't. It isn't worth it, and it doesn't change anything. Your fretting, your worry, your obsession, your stress, your fatigue, it doesn't change any actual thing. It just hurts you. So, and a lot of times, if it's caused by another person, if you're really motivated by control, one thing I always like to ask myself is, how long am I going to let this situation control me? Because I don't like being controlled. And so if another person is worrying me, another person is stressing me out, another person is causing me fatigue, I've given over control to that other person. So I like to ask, how long are you going to let this situation, how long are you going to let this person, how long are you going to let this item control you? When are you going to snap out of it? Because that is within your control. You can stop worrying right now if you decide to. Number 11 is writing emails, cards, letters, and reports, which is close kin to perfectionism and procrastination. If you need to write an email, write it. If you need to send a card, send it. If you need to write a letter, which not many people do anymore, but if you need to, write the thing. And don't worry about it being perfect. Worry about it just being effective. If you need to do a report, do it. Look at your notes and write the thing up. So many people just waste time on getting started or worrying about it or being fatigued over it. They read email from somebody else and it knocks them off their whole game for the day. If you decide you need some time before responding, decide exactly when that's going to be. If it's going to be tomorrow, respond tomorrow. If you need to sleep on it, but do it tomorrow. Don't push it back for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. Number 12 is badly handled meetings. People don't dislike meetings, they dislike bad meetings. I personally almost refuse every meeting I'm asked to go to if there's not an agenda. If I don't receive an agenda from the person who's having the meeting, then I politely decline because I want to know what we're going to be talking about. I don't want to sit there and have to process everything in the meeting on the fly and have to make decisions on the fly or have to answer questions on the fly. If it's worth having, it's probably important. So if it's important, then let's spend a few minutes mapping out the structure of the meeting, what we're going to talk about in as much detail as possible. That way I'll have time to think about it and process it and have some possible answers prior to coming to the meeting. Why wouldn't somebody do that, you might ask? Well, control. I mean, so if people want to control the meeting and they want to control what happens during the meeting, they'll try to keep the meeting as secret as possible because they want to hit you with it, and I just don't believe in that. And if you want me to come, you're going to have to send me an agenda. You send me the participants, who's going to be there, what needs to be decided, what needs to be discussed, what kind of meeting is it? Is it an informational meeting where I'm just going to be informed? Is it a training meeting where I'm going to learn something? Is it a policy and procedure meeting where we're going to discuss how things are being done today and whether or not we want to continue doing them that way? What is the meeting about? What is the purpose? That way I can get into the frame of mind I need to get into before I come to the meeting. Number 13, not knowing how, when, or where to communicate. Not knowing how. So in other words, is it an email? Is it a text message? Is it a phone call? Not knowing when. Do I need to respond now? Is there a deadline to respond? And where? Do I need to communicate at the office? Do I need to communicate? Do we need to have a meeting? Do we need to do face-to-face? How, when, and where are the specific things you need to know as far as communication is concerned. If you write me a text that is part 1 through 13, you probably should have just called me, at that point. Because at that point, it's a conversation. It's not a FYI. But if it's just an FYI, shoot me a text, right? Number 14, path of least resistance is a huge time killer. So instead of doing what's right or doing what's appropriate, we just do what's easiest. And a lot of times when we just do what's easiest, it shows up later, and we all have to get involved, and we all have to go back and redo it and fix it. I love what Coach John Wooden of UCLA said. He goes, if you don't do it right the first time, when are you going to have time to do it right? So you got to go back a second and third and a fourth time. It would have been a lot easier. You would have had more effective energy. You would have had more effective time usage if we just would have covered it and completed it right the first time. And number 15, and all executives suffer from the failure to delegate. Not knowing what you can do yourself and not knowing what you should hand off to other people. Not knowing what your strengths are and then hiring the people who can compensate for your weaknesses and delegate those things with the proper authority and proper responsibility and proper accountability, getting those 3 things lined out and be able to hand off that project, that task, or whatever it is that you need to delegate to somebody else. The failure to do that and trying to do it all yourself is a huge energy consumption problem and also a huge time waster. That's your leadership lesson for this week. We're better than before. And remember, everything gets better when you get better.
Thank you for listening to Better Than Before with Tony Richards, a business leaders podcast powered by Clear Vision Development Group. For more resources from Tony, visit clearvisiondevelopment.com. Join us next time for another episode of Better Than Before with Tony Richards.